Om Shanti, good morning. As you can see, I'm not Sister Luciana. I was smiling because I came into Sister Maureen's talk last night and she had to say she wasn't Dr. Nirmala. I don't know what was announced over here, but it was quite funny this morning because I had a feeling I was probably going to be sharing even though no one had asked me. And my name's David, by the way, from England, if some of you don't know me. And Sister Meera had actually said, probably in the next couple of days we'll ask you to do a topic. And normally they ask you what topic would you like to speak about. So I'd been thinking about all these topics. And then she said, no, what we do now is we wait for the Morley. And then we pick a topic from the Morley. So I thought, oh goodness, I hope it's one that I feel comfortable with. And I must admit, this particular topic feels very exciting to me. The importance of being introspective in the practice of soul consciousness. I'm just kind of curious, how many of you are here for first or second time, or quite new and get under 5? Yes? Oh good, so you'll know more about this than I do. I think this is a very interesting topic. It's a bit challenging actually trying to talk about it because it's really a topic that we should be feeling. So let's see how it goes. Maybe we can do some exercises. I can remember many years ago when one of the sisters was doing a radio interview on the power of silence. And the radio interviewer had great fun saying that Sister so-and-so is now going to talk about silence. So I think it's important to understand the relevance of talking about something like soul consciousness and talking about something like introspection. For me, if I look back on my journey, it's been I think I'm being very honest, it's been quite challenging coming to terms with the right relationship with soul consciousness and introspection. I'm kind of curious really what people think introspection is. What do people think introspection is? What does it mean to you? Going inside. Okay, going inside, okay. What else? Observing yourself. Okay, great. That's interesting. What else? Controlling your physical... Oh, I can see John, there's a... Yeah. Controlling your physical senses. Okay. Yeah? Shutting out the outside world. So, is that what you said? Okay. Do any of you work? Yeah? Okay. Yeah. Any of you got a family? Have to look after kids and things? Yeah? Yeah. Do you ever need to speak to them anytime? Yeah. It's quite challenging, isn't it? Well, it is a blessing and a bit of karma. I was working with young children as a children's dentist for many years and working in sort of very multicultural situation with hyperactive kids from dysfunctional families with behavior problems who were very nervous, and I guess for me it was just think, speak, and do. That's been my kind of journey through Lokic work. And when I first came to Baba, and this is quite a long time ago, 76, and I was quite young, fresh-faced, and not very experienced in the world in a sense. I mean, what I mean by that was, it was sort of football, cricket, tennis, and fishing at the weekend, and then sort of getting married fairly young, then coming to Baba fairly soon after that. So I hadn't been sort of deep into the world in that sense. So I guess probably I say I was fairly emotionally not mature in that sense, quite young. And so then being thrown into this situation where I was having to work with people's fears and emotions, and being in a situation where I really wasn't feeling very confident, because I'd only just qualified, and in those days you didn't have to do any internship. So you just qualified and off you went, you could start doing. And it was really quite, to some degree, it was quite frightening for me. Even before I came to Baba, I knew that I had to be engaged with people because it felt as if that's what the world was about. You know, I started to think about these kind of things. But I also knew that when I started doing things, I lost myself. I don't know if I'm sure you have this experience. Baba calls it action consciousness instead of being soul conscious. But before I came to Baba, I was doing lots of different types of meditations and studies and things. But one of the things was like self-awareness, and I smiled. I don't know if the brother's here, but as a brother's come for the first time, and he brought out this little oval-shaped stone, which looks a bit like a little, these saligrams you see in the temples. And I used to have a pocket full of those before Baba. I don't know why, I just like the shape of these stones. I used to put my hand in my pocket and play with them. Wonder where that sanskar comes from. But what I was trying to do was, I was using it as an awareness exercise. I was told that you had to remember who you are, had to keep remembering, be aware. And of course, it's quite difficult when you don't know who you are to be aware of who you are, but I just used to sort of practice this and play around with these stones. But the thing is, when you're working, in my situation, with kids, and they're demanding your attention, and they're fearful, they're afraid, and you have to interact with them and also get something done, it's very challenging. And I can remember after about a week phoning Sister Janet in London saying, I don't think I'll ever be soul-conscious while I'm drilling teeth, Sister Genty. And she goes, oh, for goodness sake, don't try. I think she was kind of scared I was going to... Because you know what happens, when you learn to drive, those of you who learn to drive, or you're learning to do something for the first time, it's like, I remember the first time I was trying to drive, and I said to the guy, really? I've got to put my foot down on here, move my left hand, look in the mirror, turn around, do this, and do all about these 7, 8 things. And I thought, I'll never be able to do that. But when you actually drive, if you think about what you're doing, what happens? You probably crash. Because it actually becomes natural. And I guess the point I'm making is that for me, this kind of topic, it has to be a very personal thing. And in a sense, if I'm being very honest with you, I'm just going to throw out some thoughts. I've had some thoughts on this theme for some time, and maybe it's, thank Baba, just to throw some of these out and see how you respond to it. I'm not really going to quote the Morley chapter and verse, because Baba speaks about these a lot, but I feel for me it's always been very important, the context that Baba's speaking in, and your personal context will be different. And so somehow, you have to find a way of practicing these things which actually feels comfortable for you. And In a funny sort of way, before I came to Baba, I was very gregarious in a sense. Lots of friends. There's always gangs of lads at our house waiting for a game of football and this and that. And so, in one sense, I was a mixer, but I hadn't realised it at that time. I was a bit of a moper, you just mope around on your own. I hadn't realised it till I came to Baba. It was actually depression. Or low feelings, I think we call it nowadays, don't we? I hadn't realised I used to get a bit depressed when I was a kid. Afterwards I found out it was in the family. But generally I would like company. And when I came to Baba, it was really very challenging because I was used to having all these people around me, lots of friends, lots of interactions, quite chatty, very easygoing in one sense, and being in a situation where I had to interact a lot with the kids and parents, constantly talking, and then suddenly, literally, in my case, it was almost overnight, I came to Baba, had the course, and going to the Morley, Amritvale all at the same time, and just literally doing everything from the word go, and suddenly, literally it felt as if my world had literally turned inside out. And I was very conscious of the fact that I didn't really want to be out there. I didn't want to be speaking. I didn't want to be interacting. I didn't really want to be communicating because I felt as if that was somehow going to compromise and reduce my ability to be soul-conscious. Yeah? Can you relate to that? I mean, I can see a few people nodding, and maybe a few people falling asleep, but it's okay if you want to fall asleep, it's all right. But it was actually quite, I think if I can call it as, it was actually quite spiritually distressing. And the reason why it was distressing in the sense was that at that point I hadn't really understood what introversion was and how sweet soul consciousness is. And that's why I was kind of curious just to ask you. I know I was just jotting down a couple of things. I mean, literally, I think the main point I'm making at this point is that I really have to find a way where it feels comfortable to me. And this thing that Baba talks about relationships, I really do feel that it's very important that you get your relationship with being introverted and soul-conscious right for you. And it'll be different. Maybe some of you need to do more. Maybe some of you have just been sitting around, swatting flies before you came to Baba. And maybe you need to get out and do more action. So it'll be different. But the relationship is vitally important, and it has to be right. And one of the things which I'd like us just to explore is something just to throw out that I feel really after these years that being soul-conscious and being introverted isn't a kind of, this is it and this is not. I mean, I don't know what Daddy would say about this, but I feel for me it feels more like a state of being, a state of, like in English, I don't know what was it, like modus operandum, which is probably Latin anyway. It's the mode, it's the way that you do things, it's the way that you approach things. It can also be the way that you think about things. Yeah? If two people are given the same job, someone will do things in a very different way. Some people will approach it in a very different way. And my experience tells me that I have to get my modus operandum right in how I relate to practicing soul consciousness. Because if I'm being very honest, when I came to Baba, I disappeared down quite a big black hole of depression. going to bed very late, getting up very early, not resting properly, and not eating properly didn't help. Although I know here we do. I mean, even here I find I wake up quite early. But in those days we were very service orientated. So I'd go to bed 11 o'clock, 11:30, get up at 3:30, go to work, do a full day's work, come home. Baba says, forget the body, so we don't really need to eat much. And of course, nowadays things have changed a little bit. We talk about these things. Those days we didn't talk about these things. The double foreigners were quite a new kind of breed. And although Sister Genti was a sort of a double foreigner in a sense, but I think it was a bit of a learning curve for them how to deal with a new breed. Because we want answers to everything, but we take things so literally. I can remember Daddy Janki giving a class in London, and the context was, don't be attached to things and have this sort of introverted state. And she says, whatever from the past, throw it out, burn it. Well, some guy did. And then, afterwards, when he came to tell Daddy, he thought she would be quite pleased. She said, Buddhu means... She said, I didn't... She said, but this is what you said, Daddy. She said, yes, but... And there was a time, and John's sitting here from London, and he's from the old days as well. There was a time, I can't remember exactly when it was, where Daddy actually stopped having her classes translated because she said, you don't understand what I'm saying. Well, she still says that now, but... and literally, she said, well, okay, even if you didn't want this stuff, it might have been useful for the centre or for a bhavan. Why didn't you come and tell me? But you said, Daddy, you said, burn it. I think you can understand what I mean, huh? It's like, even though sometimes Baba says burn it, he doesn't actually mean burn it. And it's a bit confusing. It was a little bit confusing for me, because I thought when I came to Baba, everything's so clear. And, in those days, if the sister said this, you just did it. You didn't think about it. Of course, now you have to think a little bit about what Srimad means and make it your own. But and I'm smiling at this because in the last Morli, Baba said, cremate your old sanskars. Yeah? Now, I don't know if any of you were over in Pandav Bhavan this morning, but in Daddy's class, but I wrote it down. And it's a very interesting comment that Daddy made in between the Morli. She was reading the Morli, and then she said something very interesting. She said, it's not about burning sanskars. I thought... And I thought, oh gosh, and Daddy is usually, she'll quote Baba chapter. She said something very interesting. She said, it's not about burning sanskars, it's about filling the divine deity sanskars in you. Interesting. Was anyone else there this morning? Did you pick that up? I think that's really very important in terms of this topic of being introspective. Because to me, there's, I don't know if it's, I hope it's not going to confuse the translators here, but I've been thinking about something which, I don't know, we could call it body conscious soul consciousness. Yeah? Can you get that? So it's body conscious soul consciousness. What I mean by that, I'll try to put it in a different way, it's thinking about soul consciousness from a mindset which is actually still body conscious. Yeah? I'm looking at some faces. Does that make... Am I clear? Because I'm not sure if it translates. But I think this is really important. A couple of Morleys ago, Baba also said something which was very, very interesting and really struck in my mind. Come into the incorporeal stage, which I guess is soul consciousness, and then create thoughts. Yeah? You picked that one up? Come into the incorporeal stage and then create thoughts. In other words, think only after you're in a state of soul consciousness. And again, going back to my spiritual childhood, I can remember one of the seniors, and I was very, very new, and she sort of, trying to work out what soul consciousness was, and she said, really, what you need to do, David, is you need to think in soul consciousness. Now, I've been thinking about what that meant for about 25 years. Because it seems to be like a chicken and an egg. When we give the lesson on the cycle to souls, and to try to get this feeling of eternity, we say, well, which comes first, the chicken or the egg? And they say, well, the chicken. And I say, well, where does the chicken come from? We say, the egg, and where does the egg come from? Or the seed and the tree. And of course the reality is that you can't really have one without the other. It's a cycle in the bigger picture, and in terms of, I don't know, a concept, it's something which just is. And to me this is like a dilemma with this kind of thinking about soul consciousness. It's as if Baba is asking us to be soul conscious, and we're having to do that from a position of 100% or soul body consciousness. Would you agree? And it feels that's like a challenge. On the one hand, Baba says, be introverted, be detached, go beyond, go within yourself, and then Daddy every day says, don't look at anyone, don't think about anyone, don't speak about anyone. And then we think, well, hang on, I've got a life to live out there. And it's trying to bring those two together, yeah? Now, for me, I've got to get this relationship right, and I was thinking also, how do I identify whether I'm soul conscious? And that's a huge topic, isn't it? And I think it's something which is an ongoing thing. Any of you sort of keeping a chart? Baba said this morning, keeping a chart, yeah, of soul consciousness. And I remember when I came, we were very particular, keeping a chart. And when you first come to Baba, you think you're remembering Baba most of the time, and you're soul conscious most of the time. Yeah, right. And then the more you think about it, and I think Maureen was talking about this last night as well, the more you go on, the more you realize that actually you're not really as soul conscious as you thought you were. And I can remember after about 10 years in Gan, I was on the phone to Sister Genti, and I said, I really don't think I understand what soul consciousness is at all. And she goes, oh, she wasn't as detached as she is now. She goes, oh, David, but you're supposed to be looking after a centre. How can you say that? And I think what I was saying was that, yes, I've understood it on one level, but now my understanding is deeper. I don't think what I thought it was before is what it really is. In other words, there's always more depth, yeah? And I had this experience very recently. In the UK, there's a group called the Foundation Group, which is Baba's Western children who've been with Baba over 10 years. And that's a very lovely group, very mature group. And we have the blessing of having a retreat in Global Retreat Centre, usually over New Year. And this year, a very, very powerful retreat. And I remember sharing, and it was a very honest feeling that, I was saying that, there's so many people here from many different centres. Can you recommend a good centre that I can go and take a introductory course in Raj Yoga? And because I think I really need to understand what Raj Yoga is. And I guess what I'm meaning by that is that I'd come to the point where, and it's a bit of a joke really having to sort of share thoughts on this topic, I was thinking, well, this isn't something to keep talking about. This is something that I have to practice. And, the retreat was about newness, and someone said, well, what are you going to do new this year? What's going to be new for you? And I said, well, I'm going to practice it. I'm going to practice self-consciousness. And they said, well, how are you going to do that? And I said, well, I've picked out these little points from the Morley, and I'd started making a whole long list, and I'll throw a few out, but it's a very lovely exercise for you to do. I find it very stimulating, where you go through the Morley and pick out all the things related to soul consciousness and the ways that Baba speaks about it, and to practice it. Like Baba says, I come and take the support of the body, and you also have to just step into the body and take the support of the body. So to actually practice that, or Baba says, I've given you this, I just take this body on loan. If you churn that, or sometimes Baba says, this is an old boot. It's an interesting one to churn. But all the different things that Baba, I'm like a trustee, how does it feel when I'm in the body as a trustee? And how does it feel when I think I own this body? If you pick those from the Morley, ones that you like, and churn on them and practice them, it's a very lovely way to practice soul consciousness. And I remember, again, Sister Gentian, one of my seniors, I said, well, how do you practice soul consciousness, Sister Gentian? And how did you make it natural? I was expecting some, sort of mind-shattering, far-reaching kind of answer. And she said, well, David, I just think I'm a soul, and as I'm speaking, and I'm remembering now because I forgot when I came in, as I'm speaking, it's I the soul that I'm speaking. And as you listen, what are you thinking now? I the soul am listening. And surprise, surprise, it's not different now than it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. And what do the daddies constantly talk about? See the soul, be the soul, think, I the soul am speaking, I the soul am listening, I the soul am looking at the soul. There isn't really, I don't think there's any other way of doing it, is there? Has anyone got any other ways of practicing soul consciousness? I mean, it'll be, if you have, please come and tell me. But I started to return to that basic practice. And I think that's being introverted as well, isn't it? Do you think? I mean, to me, I don't see these two things as separate. I think you can take introversion as a state of being, and you can also take introversion as a way of doing something. And I think soul consciousness can also be that. It's like it's a state of being, but it's also a way of doing things. And I think, going back to this thing of doing things, like practicing soul consciousness or thinking about soul consciousness from a body conscious perspective, I think that's probably what was happening to me. I was mixing the two up. One is, and we can't use this word process, can we? Daddy doesn't like this word process. Well, what's another word for process? Sorry? A journey, yeah, okay. It's an exercise. But you know what I mean by a process? It's like it's the same thing I feel when people come and learn meditation. And, we speak to them, we do commentaries, and after 7 or 8 sessions, they ask you, well, how do you meditate? What's meditation? Is it just me? Do you have this experience? And I kind of wonder, is it because we really can't explain clearly? And now I'm beginning to see that I feel it's because souls, and that probably means us, mix up the kind of the destination with the journey or the process or the way of doing things. Like, for instance, when I came to Baba, I was told, I'm a soul. Okay, so where's the soul? Here. So naturally, you think to practice soul consciousness, what do you do? Have you tried doing? Just try it for a minute. Turn your eyes up. So you're kind of looking at the soul physically here, and after a few minutes, all your muscles go into spasm, and you get a headache. And that was my initial experience of soul consciousness. Is that soul consciousness? But I'm thinking about being a point of light, and I'm really focusing. I'm really focusing. In fact, I'm concentrating so hard that I'm giving myself a headache. Is that the sweet practice of self-consciousness that Baba was talking about this morning? Is it? But I'm using the right words, aren't I? I'm using all the buzzwords: self-consciousness, center of the forehead, point of light, focus, determination, not looking outside. And how am I feeling inside? Awful. You know the list of qualities. I don't know if you do this when people come in for the meditation or the positive thinking, and you write down like all the horror stories, like stress, hatred, anxiety, dysfunctional, and all these real negative ones. And on the opposite side, you write down peace and calm and love and tranquility and equanimity. And you say, no, just do a little, run down your eye down here, down the negatives. How does that feel? Just do a little commentary on that. And then you ask them to run down the other side. And they say, which one do you like? And of course they always say, we like this one. And we know why, because it's natural, right? So what I was thinking, and again, it's a churning topic. This isn't really an answer session, but it's something for you to think about. And okay, it's a bit academic, but the 6 main qualities of the soul, and some people have 7. But so, soul consciousness for me is being in a state of truth, however you understand that. Now, usually Baba defines that as a state of reality and a state of eternity. So for me, in plain English, that becomes something which is constant and real. I'm authentic, I'm in a state of authenticity, and it's a constant state, yeah? And again, these are little maybe directions for you to think about in your own way. Generally, if something's constant, it can be constant when it's natural. Yeah, like in this morning's Morley. I don't know how it was translated here. We had Sister Denise over the other side. So the English Morley was, Baba said, I just look at the soul. This is my natural practice. I'd have to check the Hindi, but it was translated as my original practice. I think it's the same thing, isn't it? What is original is natural. What is natural is original. And what's original can be constant. And I can only make something constant when it feels natural. Yeah, would you agree? So being original, natural, constant, I think they're the same things. And if you bring that into kind of deep spiritual terms, okay, eternal, it means that for me, I should be in a state of authenticity constantly and naturally. And it should feel comfortable to you. Yeah? Would you agree? You know, when, I don't know how you define positive thinking, but I mean, certainly when I do some sessions, what it normally comes to in different words, but a thought or a pattern of thinking that you feel, that makes you feel comfortable with yourself. Yeah? I don't know if you'd agree with that. That's how I work with it. And if I'm not feeling comfortable with myself, then I would suggest that that's not positive thinking. Now, ultimately, we know for Baba's children, ultimately positive thinking is what? Soul consciousness. And I can't really be completely positive in a very natural way unless I'm soul conscious. But in order to be self-conscious, I've got to start thinking positively. And it feels to me, and you know, this is just my own thinking, that these things are like, they're not either or. It's not black and white. It's like cyclic. It's like, you know, these cycles where you try to do your best and then you do reflective practice and see how you got on, and then you look back and think how you could have done that better, and then you know, like continuous improvement. You get that in the workplace. It feels more like that to me. And this feeling of, even though actually Baba says it, you're either soul conscious or body conscious. And I accept that. I don't disagree with that, but I feel it's kind of quite extreme. To me, that's like an academic point. And the context of that is to make me realize that I really need to practice and go deep into soul consciousness. And I can't just think, yeah, I'm soul conscious most of the time. But in terms of practice, I think it's both. It's like, how can I put it? It's like, you know what I was mentioning before, like soul consciousness is the journey, or being able to meditate is the destination. But for me, and we used to have this sweet argument in the center, because I would say, well, meditation's about thinking, and my service commented, no, David, it's about feeling. Now, if Luciana was here, you know, from South America, it's feeling. Now, what's right? Is meditation about thinking or feeling? Sorry? Both. Sure? Which comes first? Sure? Okay, you can think about it. Oh, sorry, didn't. You can feel it. You can feel about it. Have a think about it. Discuss it with your friends. You know, it's an interesting. I think it's sort of both, and I've changed on this because I was in, you know, meditation from the Latin. What is it? Meditare means to think and to heal. Therefore, it's creating thoughts that make us heal. No, I'd agree with that, and sometimes we say that it's a pattern of thoughts which heal. So they heal our thinking, they heal our emotions, they heal our feelings, they ultimately heal our body. But if I'm feeling something, I think about it, don't I? You know, like we use this expression, I had a really good feeling, or, you know, I got a bad feeling about you. So it's cyclic, isn't it? I'll create thoughts. In fact, my thoughts have created the feeling, and then from those feelings, thoughts arise. And it's another thing, but just the expression, ill feeling, it's feelings which make you ill. Bad feelings, they're feelings which make you bad, feel bad. Good feelings are feelings which make you feel good. And I think those are aspects of soul consciousness, yeah? Would you agree? But one's a process, one's the journey, and one's the destination. So in terms of meditation, you know, trying to explain to someone, I said, look, okay, you're here, you want to go and visit your best friend 10 miles away, so what do? You get in the car, you drive over, and then what do? Do you stay in the car? No. You get out, park the car, go inside, and you have your conversation, right? So the purpose of driving was to take you to where you wanted to get, and when you were there, the purpose really was to have a nice chat with your friend, right? So I feel in the same way that like meditation, it's like in that context, is a process of thinking which gradually takes you into the experience of what you're thinking about. Yes, am I clear? Does it seem clear? We do, when we try to explain the essence of meditation, I don't know if you do, but I like just, you draw a circle, put a dot in the middle, and then we give people this example of the flowing river. Where does the river start off? In the mountain tops, and it's clean and pure and fresh, and when it reaches the bottom of the mountain, it's full of all sorts of junk, yeah? But the rubbish, the junk, the garbage isn't part of the river. It's in the river, but it's not of the river, yeah? Some of you probably use this example. And then we explain that we've, all the rubbish we've simply acquired, yeah? And deep inside the soul is the innate qualities. Now, for me, and it's taken me a while to figure this out, because I used to teach people meditation, but sometimes you realize you don't really understand what it is yourself. That's why it's good to teach. In London, they did a nice session with some of the seniors teachers, teaching to learn and learning to teach. So if you teach what you need to learn. But going back to this essence, it's like thinking is part of meditation, because I need to think in order to recreate the feeling. Once I've touched the feeling, I don't need to think. Then I can stop thinking. And I'm just in the experience. And I guess this is a little bit like soul consciousness. I think I do need to think about it. But I need to think about it in a way that I'm moving towards deepening my experience and not just thinking. Yeah? Baba talks about this, not becoming the embodiment of thinking, but becoming the embodiment of experience, or the form of that thought. So it feels like some people, when they're meditating, they just get lost in the journey. So they've reached the destination, but they don't get out of the car. They just sit in the car. They don't allow themselves to enjoy the experience. And for me, it feels a little bit like that in terms of introspection and soul consciousness. It feels like introspection is almost like the journey that takes me into soul consciousness. But it's not an either-or. When I'm soul conscious, I will automatically feel like being more inward-looking. Is this your experience? Just a couple more things, and then we can perhaps just open it out a little bit. A couple of things, and again, these are things that I think for you really need to think about. 6 main qualities of the soul, coming back to that truth. So I am that which I am. Yeah? Any of you had that mantra before you came to Baba? I am that I am. I tried that. And this little voice used to come, yes, but what the hell am I? I am that I am. And this little voice, yes, but who am I? So I am, so okay, the soul, eternal. So that we know, and we know meditation means, quote, thinking about aspects of eternal truth. So that's your, you can quote that to someone when they say, what's meditation? And thinking about aspects of eternal truth. Well, what does that mean? On the shop floor, so I'm sitting there trying to control a kid and drilling, and I'm thinking about aspects of eternal truth. And God, I wish this kid would sit still. So 6 main qualities of the soul. Okay, peace, love, happiness, stroke bliss, wisdom, stroke knowledge, purity and power. Okay, I know sometimes I guess those are the 6 main qualities. So peace, love, happiness, wisdom, purity, peace. Now, the way that I try and see whether or not I'm soul-conscious or whether I'm moving towards soul-consciousness is to check whether or not those qualities are working. In other words, if I'm in the experience of any of those qualities, then I would say that I'm moving along the spectrum to being soul-conscious. And I'd call it a spectrum. And if those qualities are absent, and again, we haven't really time to go into the ins and outs of it, but again, think about, what is the opposite of peace and love and wisdom, and, a few things that just comes immediately to mind as aspects of Maya, which are fear, confusion, stress, tension. Check when you're making efforts or paying attention, whether you're making efforts on the basis of those positive qualities or the other. Now, going back to when I came to Baba, and this is why I sort of bring you back to this idea of making sure that you find a way to sort of move into a soul-conscious mode of thinking, and then think about the ideas. Because the signs are, like my headache, giving yourself a headache, becoming soul-conscious, means I'm not thinking about soul-consciousness in soul-consciousness. Yeah? So if I'm doing things out of fear, if I'm doing things out of force, which Baba calls Hatha Yoga, if I'm doing things because I feel I have to, or I should do, or I must do, or, out of insecurity, my own feeling on this is that I'm using a body-conscious mode of thinking or being to think about making spiritual efforts. I don't know, is that making, also, am I making any sense? You need to think about this, but I think for me that's the touchstone. It's like, Baba uses this expression a lot, don't have tension about paying attention. And I've done that, and I'm sure, we've all done this. I'm going to get to Madhavan, I'm going to really hit 2 o'clock meditation, I'm going to, I'm going to become soul-conscious if it kills me. And it's like, I'm laughing because I used to do this, and I'm much better now, in fact, but I had to laugh. I saw this cartoon, and it was someone stuck in the middle of a big traffic jam, and she was going, "I'm late for my relaxation class." So she so much wanted to get relaxed. She was so stressed that I really want to get to my relaxation class, and I'm late for it. Now, I had to give a note to a brother in London last month, and he was sitting. He pretended he didn't see me. He still pretended. He said, I could feel his vibe. "Go away, I'm meditating, you're disturbing me." He didn't say it, but I could. And I said, "But there's a note from Sister Genti." And I thought, those kind of, "It's lovely to see you." And I said, "Brother," I said, "I'm sorry to interrupt your meditation, but he said, 'You're disturbing me. This is a big test, David.'" I said, "Well, sorry, but there's a note from Sister Genti." and then for days afterwards, that was a big test for me. And I had to smile, but I thought, well, is that meditation? He was doing all the right things. He was sitting there, eyes focused, not looking left or right, and this is what Baba says we have to do. The eyes weren't flickering, no moisture, very, very focused. I was saying, "Brother," he didn't hear me, so that's also introversion, isn't it? Where you don't hear things, is that right? And then I went round the front and said, "Brother," and he didn't see me, so he must have been introverted, because that's another sign of introversion, isn't it, where you don't see things. And I thought, God, that's just how I was, you know? Like, you know, you're standing there and you're practicing to be soul-conscious, and someone says, David, did you put the bread on? Because, you know, there's quite a few people. David! Oh! Now, you know when someone, you know, like, I don't know if you have this expression in your country, but when a husband is talking to the wife and he's not listening, and they say it's like talking to a brick wall. I don't know, do you have that expression? Now, in body-conscious introspection, the feeling that is you get all this tension, stress, fear, confusion. And also the feeling that people get from you isn't sweet. They feel you're cold. They feel you're not communicating. They feel you're cutting off. They feel insulted, actually. They don't feel welcomed. To me, those are all signs that I might be doing the right things, but I need to change the mode that I'm doing them in. Now, I'm not sure if I've worked out how to do this, to be quite honest. If I'm being very honest with you, but this is what I'm trying to work on. And, you know, really trying to check the feelings and see, you know, is there a feeling of sweetness? And it was very lovely this morning, because Mira came over to me and said, David, Luciana can't do the class, and can you do it this morning? I said, okay. So I was very good. And Daddy in a class said, when you read the Morley, you've got to be in the stage of the Morley, you know? Which was, you know, so you can't just pick the Morley up and read like a newspaper. So I thought, God, I better be in an introverted stage when I go and share, and at least I've got 2 hours now to be soul-conscious, so at least I can be soul-conscious before I go. And then one old friend and one new friend said, "Oh, do you mind if we come and sit here?" And I'd gone and sat on a table on my own because I wanted to be introverted, go deep, think, marshal my points, you know, so I can... And it was a lovely Morley, wasn't it? And I said, trying to be introverted means not speak. I said, which point did you like best? And actually, it was such a lovely experience, actually. One was an older friend, and one was someone, I don't think he's here now. I said I might give him a name in dispatch, a mention in dispatches, but we started to actually churn this, and it was very, very refreshing, very stimulating. And actually, Baba knows me very well, because those of you who knew me when I used to meet Baba in the early days, I'm fairly cheerful and happy now, but in those days, Baba used to say, I'm very serious, which is like, it's seniors talk for depressive introversion. Where you go around, you know, and, well, it's a blessing from Baba. He always used to, when I was like that, Baba used to say, you're the one who's ever happy. And it was a very sweet thing. Actually, Baba, I feel Baba's blessing. You know, Baba took me from that stage of being serious. And it's interesting, you know, if you look at Brahma Baba, he was a perfect example of this. And, you know, I was thinking before I came in Baba's room, who can teach me how to become introverted and soul-conscious in a very natural, nice way? It's Baba, actually, Brahma Baba. And now I see with the daddies, you know, you don't get that feeling. Okay, we didn't see Brahma Baba, but we see Avyakt Baba. Okay, sometimes he becomes a little bit serious in the sense when he wants to make a powerful point, but generally, if you watch Baba through the whole Morley and all the meetings, mostly, what is he doing apart from speaking? Lovely, isn't it? Beautiful smile. And that's a sign of a soul who's free, you know? And to me, this is the essence, you know, the essence of spirituality in one word really is to be free. And Baba once said that in an Avyakt Morley many years ago. The whole essence of spirituality is to be free. And Daddy mentioned that, I think, in the class the other morning. Very beautiful. You should be able to accomplish everything with a smiling face. And in Hindi, I think the two words gambir. Yeah? Is it gambir? Gambirta. So you see, sometimes that's translated as being serious. I think it more means like mature. It's like a state of maturity. And then the other word that's always linked with that, and this was like Baba's word, description of Baba really, Gambirta and Harshit Mukta, cheerfulness, but Ramnik. Ramnikta. It means being entertaining in a spiritual way. You know, like you go to Daddy and then she'll pull the toli back. You know, like she's very playful, and sometimes Baba would do that with us. Why? Just to lighten us up, you know? And those of us who met Baba, sometimes souls would come really cheerful and Baba would give them really powerful drishtis to make them a bit more introverted. You know, and the likes of myself, you know, were really serious, and Baba would, I don't know why, but every time I went in front of Baba, everyone used to start laughing. And I think it was like a signal to become light and easy. And again, you know, it's this thing of balance. I can be light and easy in a kind of a body-conscious way, and it can become careless. But light and easy in a very natural, introverted, soul-conscious way is a very beautiful quality, and it's the quality of the soul. So lightness, easiness is also a sign of being introverted. It's a sign of soul consciousness. I think so. And so if I'm getting heavy about being light, it's not, it means I have to, my thinking needs changing. Yeah? So this is really important. So Baba really was the example of that. And, you know, I see the daddies, and particularly, were any of you down at Shantivan for the last week or so? Okay, I'm just conscious of the time, but just want to come back to this aspect. Just this thing which I sort of went away again when Baba was talking about burning sanskars, and Daddy this morning said it's not about burning sanskars but imbibing the divine virtues. And I think for me this is probably the essence of what I'm trying to say. I'm sure there is a process where, you know, like we did when we were kids with the magnifying glass. You know, you in the sunlight, and you just focus the sun's energy, and something gets burned. Now, I'm sure Baba wants us to reach that stage where we can just literally burn away sanskars. But my own experience of this, if I'm being honest, is that I don't think I've had that level of yoga where that can really happen consistently. And when you're coming in from a completely body-conscious state, I don't think it's realistic to suddenly, you know, hit the seed stage and bang straight into this state where I'm going to become karmatita overnight. It's not possible. I mean, it is a journey. But I have to build up to that. And I have to have that aim, and Sister Moyne was talking about this last night, that, you know, in meditation and yoga, I should have that attention and that focus, so the Baba, I can really concentrate Baba's energy. So I should have that aim, but being very realistic about it, I feel it's quite uncomfortable to think I've got to burn all this away. And of course, what happens, and it happens when you go back from Madhaban, you feel great for a couple of days, week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and then what happens? Because somehow I've got to integrate or incorporate what I've learned into my action. And, you know, I've heard some of the seniors talk about this, and I like this very much, where the incorporeal stage, which is the high stage, to be incorporated into my activity. And that's like, I've heard it described as the angelic stage. So I'm incorporating that deep stage of soul consciousness, or that deep incorporeal stage, into my activity. And that to me is like, is what an angel is. It's just a soul-conscious human being, I guess. Now, in order to do that, if I'm just trying to get rid of, remove, burn the weakness, throw it out, not look at others, not speak to others, not be distracted by the world, personally I found that very severe and not very comfortable. And the reality is, it's out there, isn't it? There's impurity. You can't pretend it's not there. You're seeing it. But what I feel for me is much more comfortable, and this is really more in line with the definition of introspection in Hindi, again, antramukt, literally means, it's a funny expression, it literally means to turn your face inwards, which is quite interesting. So just turn yourself inside out. And again, for me, that's really a clue. All the 5 senses that are going out, I use them to look in. And we know, and Daddy's always nattering on about this, isn't it? Whatever you look at, you think about. Whatever you see, you think about. Whatever you hear, you think about. Whatever you taste, you think about. Whatever you smell, you think about. Whatever you touch, you think about. So I can't go around with my eyes closed, And some people meditate like that, don't they? And I say, David, you got a patient waiting. Sorry, I'm just meditating. Oh, can you imagine? It's crazy, isn't it? So this is like doing things in an external way. Everything for Baba's internal. So I have to have an internal, an introspective way of practicing introspection. And again, I haven't churned this deeply, but we were talking about this morning, and I think it's a lovely thing to think about. And if you have any thoughts, please come and tell me sometime. But the 5 external senses, okay, inner eye, inner ear, inner sense of touch, like sensitivity, inner smell, taste, just having that feeling, that taste from my original stage, that connection with Baba. Nice thing to think about, to actually practice. And if I'm doing that, what I practice to do is I acknowledge what's going on outside, and I appreciate, which means I accept, and even I can welcome. Even Maya comes, you say, come, most welcome. Sit down. Let's transform you. So that I'm not all the time drawing a circle around myself and trying to batten down the hatches. Like I mentioned before, it feels very uncomfortable. But in a very natural way, let me use my inner eye, my inner senses. And then, instead of trying to get rid of the vices, and again, I think Daddy didn't expand on it this morning, but she's mentioned this before, and for me this was a real breakthrough in my coming out of this, serious efforts, was she said, forget about getting rid of the vices, just don't use them. Or, being realistic, and this, Daddy didn't say this, but I'm saying this, use them less. Baba's constantly talk. Oh, in the slogan, yeah. Baba, he's joking with it. He says, are you a soul or not? And we all say, yes, we're a soul. And what are the original sanskars of the soul? And then he says, well, how can you say my sanskars for the old stuff? And I feel personally that, again, Moin was talking about conquering Maya, but for me, the real illusion is not that you don't have Maya, you're in a state of Maya. So when I'm having all these thoughts and storms, to me that's not Maya. That's part of the cleansing process. In healing, illness is seen as a return to balance. It's a signal saying, you've got a headache, so there's something needs to be put back in balance. So what do? I got an aspirin? Got a painkiller, so we want to blot it out, instead of seeing it as a messenger. So if Maya's coming, it means there's something that I need to adjust. It's a messenger. And for me, the real Maya, the real illusion, is when I believe that I am that negativity. Again, maybe you've thought about this, but think about it. It's not when the negativity comes, I wouldn't say that's Maya, but when I identify with it, when I feel that that's me, then I'm in Maya, I'm in the illusion. And when the brother asked me, what song do you want to play? I love this song. I can't remember the exact words now, but the song at the beginning, it's like, basically in essence it's saying, have faith or trust in your strengths, don't see the weaknesses. And I feel that's what Baba's saying. That's faith. Not that I'm a soul. Is there anyone here that thinks there's something else other than a soul? The reality is we are souls, and yet we haven't been using the sanskars of soul consciousness for so long that we've got out of the habit. And if you read all of Baba's latest Avyak Maulis, they're all mentioning this. And I feel this is why it was a very significant thing that Daddy said this morning. Instead of trying to get rid of the old stuff, just start practicing the new stuff. And again, I can't tell you how to do it. Everything's in the Morley and Daddy's classes. Just go ahead and practice it. Find a way that's comfortable for you, that feels natural to you. And instead of trying to get rid of anger, think about, what are the things that I need to practice, to imbibe, to feel, actually, so that I don't need to get angry. Acceptance, flexibility, patience, then you can think of all the virtues you need to think about that, and the powers and all the rest of it. That's an exercise. But in terms of actually practice, my own feeling on this is that what pulls me back into body consciousness again and again, firstly this illusion that I keep re-empowering, that I believe that the negativity is me. And secondly is habit. Is that I haven't practiced soul conscious often enough. And that's why I have to just find a way and just practice it. And slowly it'll become a habit. I mean, even as I'm speaking now, I've just remembered that I forgot to think that I'm a soul speaking. But the thought's coming back. Because I've been practicing this for a couple of weeks quite earnestly. And what I find is I forget, and then afterwards you think, I forgot to remember. But then sometimes now I can feel, yes, that thought's coming. And I'm sure if I keep practicing, it'll come to the point where it's natural. So I guess in essence what I'm saying is, have the faith in who you are as a soul, but also the qualities, and then the habit needs to be developed. And just one final point. Baba said something very powerful in Avyakt Murli. It really struck me that you are actually full, you are actually content, but if you think or you feel that you're not, it's as if you're not. I mean, I'm paraphrasing, I can't remember the exact words. And it's something Baba said to me personally. Many years ago, he said, are you content? Are you content with service? Are you content with your experiences? No, plainly wasn't at that point. And Baba actually looked at me and said, actually, if you think about it, you are. And again, what does having faith in the soul mean? Not just that I'm a soul, but the original qualities of the soul is I have to have the faith that that's me. And for me, that's the practice of soul consciousness. And that makes, I'm not blocking things out, but that feels so sweet and it feels so interesting that I choose to go inside and to practice that. And then action or activity or interaction or communication is not then the enemy of soul consciousness or introspection. Because again, that feels negative, but it's actually, going back to this cyclic thing, It's like it's the way that the soul can then express and bring that into action so that it anchors that sanskar and it can become a habit. And I feel that's what Daddy was kind of getting at this morning, although she didn't elaborate on it, that I practice to bring things into action. And then just one final point, and again, just for you to churn on, again, this debate, what does it mean to inculcate? Maybe that's another topic, but, okay, to imbibe, to take in, but am I taking in qualities and making them my own? Or am I recognizing and acknowledging that they're there and I need to express them? And as I express them, they become part of my personality. And therefore we say, oh, he's got very good dharana. What does that mean? It means I'm expressing them. Now, again, we had this conversation with Sister Gentian. It's both. It's both. So sometimes I go deep within and I emerge and I bring out and I express. And sometimes I see a quality in someone, like with Daddyji, you see that love and you look at it and it's almost as if you see it and you bring it back in and you make it your own. Yeah? And the final thing for myself, after 27 years, I think I finally agreed that I can only do this with God's help. Because the negative or the perverted form of the main sanskar of a Brahmin soul, purity, but that manifests as freedom, and in the world that manifests as independent, right? So when we come to Baba, I can do this. I don't need anyone to tell me. I don't even need Baba. I've got Baba's knowledge now, so I can become soul-conscious. And my sweet suggestion is bring Baba into the equation. And I really feel now, after so many years, it feels so lovely going back to my childhood, but it was all so simple. Just be soul-conscious and remember Baba, but not like a parrot. What does that mean? What does it mean to be soul-conscious? What does it mean to be in Baba's remembrance, in activity, and being with Baba? Think about that, and then I hope, things will become natural. Okay, I'll finish. I'm going to make the announcement first, in case I forget, and then maybe... have I made sense? You think, has anyone got any comments or anything they'd like to... I'm just kind of curious if... I did ask for another microphone, I don't know, if not just speak loudly. Okay, maybe you can, speak loud. Oh, really? Okay, that's nice. Yeah. 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 The sister's saying that she also had this kind of experience. I think it's very useful. And again, coming back to this, it's like, and it was coming up yesterday in the session, Baba's saying checking, but I can check in a negative way, and I can check in a positive way. And it has to be simultaneously. So I check and then I take power from Baba to change. Otherwise I can become negative or disheartened about the fact that I'm not soul-conscious. But it doesn't make sense because I know I'm not soul-conscious. Or I'm not as soul-conscious as I could be. I don't know if in England we have this expression, joined up learning. Do they have this? Joined up learning, where everything's kind of connected, and also in departments they have like joined up processes where it's not one people doing here, one people doing there, but it all has to be connected. So we were discussing this back in the center, that we have to develop like joined up soul consciousness. It's not that we're not soul conscious, but it's just that we need to make it more consistent. Yeah, anything else anyone would like to comment on? Or there is a mic here if you want to.
Okay. Yes, it's for you, the question is. I'm in my infant stage, 18 months only. I'm starting to walk a little bit. But when you were talking about checking and making, Baba is constantly saying, check yourself, check yourself. I have tried once, I am going to be very honest, to make a chart, and it didn't work. Really, because I felt it was like funny, you know, it was like, it's not real, it's not true. I lately, and these days, Baba said, don't write anything, you know, why are you going to use some paper, waste paper? It was so funny, and I said, yeah, you're right, you know, Baba, as usual, because it's inside the check-in. I feel, at this point, 18 months, okay, I feel that the check-in honestly has to be inside. If you want to write, okay, write. I write to Baba. Not every day, most. I write to him. But the check-in itself for soul consciousness is inside, honestly. And it works. And I think, you know, honesty, again, Baba talked about it, being very honest. And I just wanted to share that with you.
Thank you.
And I've learned a lot from today. Thank you very much.
It's cleanliness. And again, one thing, I mean, again, for me, it's interesting that at the NCO's meeting, it was decided to take up the Mariadas for the 6 topics. And very interesting, because we've had a lot of discussions about that. Again, you can just take the Mariadas as, you know, and that's what I did. Came to Baba, celibacy, day 1, purity. And of course, and it's good to do that if you want to do that, but it's like, what are we doing it for? It's to make us soul-conscious, which is to experience these 6 main qualities of the soul. So it's for lightness. So I have to be doing it with the right consciousness, which means I have to understand the principle or the reasoning as to why Baba is saying this is important.